Number 5 on this list is the collective unconscious backrooms. If I was to buy into any creepy backrooms theory, then I think it would be this one. Backrooms Wiki says, according to the famous psychiatrist Carl Jung, humans have a collective unconscious, a series of ideas that we all universally share as a species, with the backrooms being one of these concepts. Liminal spaces are wired into our collective minds as shared places, and the backrooms are simply a shared perception of these liminal spaces. Practically, the human being is only affected by the world as he perceives it, so when a human falls asleep and dreams, hallucinates a vision of this collective perception, he is sucked into it. As such, people in the backrooms are often dreaming or delirious. Another interpretation is that the backrooms would be the various dream/parallel realities of the cosmic/divine mind. So basically, the backrooms are a function of our imagination. Now, I don't really understand how we can share this space with others in our collective minds, but I do totally agree with some of this theory. For instance, the human being is only affected by the world as he perceives it. That makes a ton of sense to me. So if our brain decides that it's going to perceive the world as this creepy backroom space, then bam, here we are, now dealing with this backroom space. I think the best question with this one is, how the heck do we get out of this space once our brain has decided that we're in it? But you may not be able to find that out without going in yourself, which I obviously don't recommend doing. Number 4 on this list is the shattered reality theory. Imagine a universe formed right as ours was, not quite one with our world, but also not its total own entity either. Backrooms Wiki says the shattered reality theory is a theory formed by scientists who dropped into the backrooms. This theory holds that the backrooms were formed at the Big Bang and is a separate universe for the real world. It states that it is a correlated universe to our own and was a completely different universe with its own laws, but was melded with the real world by the force of billions of human imaginations 24 hours a day in the real world. The backrooms became more and more like the real world until it became what it is now. The believers of this theory state that the fake reality program found in the end was a failed device, which was an attempt to create a new reality exactly like the real world, but always fails due to chaos theory. So if this is true, then maybe the backrooms aren't done evolving. Maybe they are slowly but surely trying to become our world, but like a sick and dark version of it. Where they are right now with this endless maze of office space is just where they are in their evolution, but in 10,000 years, maybe it looks totally different. I'm not sure, it sounds like a bit of a stretch to say the least, but we are talking about the backrooms here. Number 3 on this list is the Eldritch Overlord theory. This is a bit of a wild one, but bear with me here, folks. Backrooms Wiki says the Eldritch Overlord theory states that the backrooms were created by a being beyond that human comprehension and logic, and what people would consider to be overworldly. While the theory may seem outlandish at first glance, many things start to make much more sense if you consider that the backrooms is nothing but a way of entertainment for higher beings, and that everybody that ends up in the backrooms were chosen by said being. The vast infinity of the backrooms and the entities all start to make sense, as the theory states that they were created by the said eldritch being. Some people went even as far to suggest that the said being is the serpentine entity found in the serpent rooms. However, some think that said serpent is a mere servant of an even more powerful and sinister being. This theory also has a branch, which suggests that instead the eldritch being got lost in the backrooms. However, this is unlikely, as a being with such power would have no problems navigating the said mazes of the backrooms. Although this theory may seem very plausible, the biggest problem with it is that nobody has encountered the said overlord of the backrooms, and there's been no evidence to suggest that the serpent is the said overlord, as he does not seem to have any connections with anything outside of said serpent rooms. I mean, I guess if these backrooms are real, then I could buy into this one. Like, I think about scientists who use rats. They put them in mazes and watch as they try to get out of them while performing experiments on the rats. I bet to that rat the maze probably feels like the backrooms. So maybe that's what's going on to us. There's some super powerful being sticking us in a maze and seeing if we can get out. Number 2 on this list is Fehlands Theory. So this guy is a bit of a nut, but he might be onto something here. Dr. Adrian Fehland was a German physicist that after contact with the Backrooms was enamored with the spatial anomaly. He had proposed several theories in the past, from teleportation illusions to the wrath of supernatural beings. This theory proposes that the Backrooms is the fourth dimension that we've all been questioning, and that the fourth dimensions are length, width, depth, and unpredictability. He proposed that the Backrooms may not be 999 million square miles around like previously thought, but that instead it was closer to 100 meters across, but that it was just ever changing. Now, it's said that not a ton of people believe in this theory, but that also doesn't mean that it's wrong. The fourth dimension has been talked about and looked into for a long time by scientists. Nobody knows what it is or how it operates, but I would imagine that a characteristic of it would be unpredictability. Now, do I think that the fourth dimension is a bunch of creepy office spaces? I mean, maybe not, but I also don't have any proof that it isn't either. And finally, number 1 on this list is the hell theory. I feel like this one is pretty straightforward, and it makes sense why some people might believe in this theory. Backrooms Wiki says, this theory is suggested by some religious people. They believe that the Backrooms is hell itself, the place where dead, unsaved souls are tortured endlessly. In this theory, no clipping is considered a sinful act, thus explaining how no clipping can end you up in the Backrooms, and the levels are designed to torture souls that end up here. They also believe that people or souls who are dead in the Backrooms aren't actually dead, they're just on another level of torture. Imagine just being stuck in an endless, disgusting, creepy office space for the rest of your existence. Yeah, I can see how some people might believe that that's hell. Especially when we get deeper into the levels and you start encountering some of the creatures that could be here. Creatures have been highly debated in the Backrooms. Whether they exist or not and what type is all up in the air. Although it's generally accepted that there are some type of entities that roam around here, and the deeper you go, the worse they get. I can barely stick around in an office space from 9 to 5 every day, let alone for the rest of my existence. Hopefully this theory isn't true, because I don't think I could last an eternity in the Backrooms.
Coming in at number 5, SCP-173's True Origins. The first SCP, a classic, the Peanut. There's a lot of history and controversy surrounding this large legume-shaped lad. Of course, the image that 173 was based on originally had nothing to do with SCP. It was actually a piece of installation art by Japanese artist Izumi Kato. The picture of a strange humanoid with a painted face looking over its shoulder from the corner of a dingy bathhouse room really affected people, causing them to think very creepy thoughts. Good work, Izumi Kato. Eventually, the SCP Wiki got permission to use the image on their site, as long as nobody used the image for commercial purposes or contacted the artist, etc. All in all, a good deal, especially if the Foundation gets to use the photograph of a piece of art so formative to the SCP community. However, this raises some new questions and queries. Why does it act that way if it was originally just a piece of art? Why didn't the Foundation just find a different image to use? Why does 173 keep changing in all the SCP games? Well, I don't know if I can answer all of these questions, but I can present this theory. SCP-173 was actually created by members of Are We Cool Yet, the anomalous art collective pervasive throughout the wiki. Are We Cool Yet is a group of artists, or I suppose at this point a wide variety of vaguely connected artists, that make anomalous art and put it out into the world. Often it can be harmless and just freaks people out a little bit, leading to the Foundation having to contain it to prevent widespread awareness of the anomalies. Other times, these works of art can be dangerously destructive and hard to handle. 173 is just such an installation. We know that it only moves when you don't look at it, and if it gets close enough to you, it'll snap your neck. Consider this. What if somebody at AWCY made a piece that didn't let you look away? It's art that you can't afford to let out of your sight. Wouldn't that make so much sense? Those meta lunatics. Coming in at number 4, Dr. Wondertainment is more than they seem. There are plenty of recurring characters across the SCP world. Doctors, researchers, religious leaders, and more. But one who seems to show up in more varied places than anyone else is the fabled Dr. Wondertainment, creator of the Little Misters line of anomalies, developer of anomalous snacks of all shapes, sizes, and flavors, possible O5 council member. But is Dr. Wondertainment a singular entity, or is it a group of wonderful and whimsical researchers, developers, and creators? Either way, there's a sinister underside to this Willy Wonka-esque organization. While most of the anomalies created by the Wondertainment enterprise are kinda goofy, if not hard to contain, there are many that slip through the cracks and cause real damage. Sure, a lot of the Wondertainment line is developed with the express purpose of entertaining children. A lot of these toys and gadgets do end up being much more dangerous than other, more explicitly scary SCPs. I suppose that's the risk you run when using something created by a reality bender, or a group of reality benders. That's up to interpretation. Are all SCPs reliant on Dr. Wondertainment's reality bending? Did they, it, group have something to do with the classic factory? All questions without solid answers. Wondertainment is a fascinating figure in the SCP universe and may be so much more than people assume. Is there malice behind that goofy exterior? What do you think? Coming in at number 3, SCP-096 has been terminated. Now wouldn't that be a relief? Although it took quite a while to make it happen. Hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself here. SCP-096 is an uber popular scary SCP. This pale, emaciated, lanky humanoid has a face that only a mother could love. Unfortunately, anyone who witnesses its visage will immediately be hunted down and killed by the creature. This goes for seeing it in person, in a photograph, or on video. Artists' renditions don't seem to have this effect though, thank goodness. For years, this SCP would escape containment, rip apart a few people, find a few others that saw its face on the way, and then return to its natural environment. 096's anomalous properties made it especially dangerous. It could run at insane speeds, take untold amounts of damage, and kill people with the utmost ease. Add the fact that anyone who sees its face becomes a new target, and you have a big problem on your hands. What if it made it to a city center? What if somebody took a picture and uploaded it online? This could cause a gigantic chain reaction leading to the deaths of many people. In the wiki entry, there is an audio log of an interview between a doctor and the captain of a team tasked with retrieving 096 after a containment breach. After hearing about all the damage 096 caused and all the lives it had ended, the doctor ends the interview with a formal request to the higher-ups of the Foundation. Terminate this thing as soon as possible. This goes against the SCP Foundation's principles. You're not securing, containing, and protecting something by killing it. But this doctor seemed to be very invested in the destruction of this demon. It isn't confirmed what happens next, as is the case in some situations where the SCP has been rendered dead or destroyed. However, this could be an example of an off-the-books termination. What if they did indeed deal with 096, but kept its containment procedures open in order to set a really high standard? A creature has to be at least as dangerous as 096 before anyone can really do anything about it, and I'm not sure if that makes me feel more or less safe than it did before. Coming in at number 2, the real Procedure 110 Montauk. Within the SCP Foundation, there is a procedure rumored to be so soul-crushing, so dark and violent, so horrible to behold that nobody's really allowed to remember it at all. Folks assigned to SCP-231 are hand-selected to be as obedient and psychologically stable as possible, and even then they're put in concealing helmets and giving voice changers so as to dehumanize them more and prevent any possible recognition by others involved. In order to work at the site that 231 is held at, staff are blindfolded, have their ears covered, and then they're carted around in no fewer than 7 forms of transportation to ensure maximum disorientation. After all is said and done, they're given amnestics anyways and some time off of work to recoup. No records of who has served on this project are kept, so what the hell is going on with this procedure then? Why is it so serious? What could possibly be so awful that all these additional requirements are put in place? Well, SCP-231 is a young female who was retrieved from a Scarlet King cult. It appears that she may be pregnant with the Scarlet King version of the Antichrist. By performing this brutal ritual known as Procedure 110 Montauk every day, the Foundation manages to keep the Scarlet King at bay. The terrible torture, the pain, the suffering, these all prevent the Scarlet King from entering our world, which is good because as soon as he enters, it's all over. But what if I told you it's all smoke and mirrors? What if the procedure wasn't the torture itself, but the appearance of torture? What if they put up all these barriers so nobody from the outside world would ever find out what's actually going on, and in reality they were just housing the girl and keeping her safe? Well, that isn't what the Foundation wants getting out, but it is a possibility. Instead of brutal redacted, maybe they're just giving her a snack and putting her to bed. If it's enough to keep the Scarlet King at bay, it's good enough for me. And finally at number 1, all 001 proposals are real. Oh boy, that's a doozy, isn't it? There are plenty of 001 proposals that scare the ever-living crap out of all sorts of people. There's the Gate Guardian, When Day Breaks, the Factory. There are lots of high-powered SCP proposals out there. Some of them are real, some of them aren't, and some of them exist just to throw people off the trail to finding the actual SCP-001. Some folks think that there is one true 001, and others think that there are a few. But what if they were all real? All of them. Just take a deep breath and consider that for a moment. Imagine the chaos, the utter lunacy that would unfold. Well, it's possible, isn't it? What's the scariest 001 proposal? I suppose it doesn't really matter if they're all real. Coming in at number 5, we've got weather controlling labs in Alaska. You heard me right. Some people have decided that a research lab up north is actually meant to control the weather. This could be a decent movie plot, but is there anything to this theory? There is an actual facility in Alaska known as the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HAARP. Built to study the ionosphere, an energetic and largely inaccessible section of the upper atmosphere, it makes use of a high-powered radio frequency transmitter to perturb the area and then measure the perturbations. It looks like a fenced-off field with antennas, which is, I guess, fertile ground for conspiracies. While everyone involved with the research program itself maintains that it is strictly used for research purposes, many skeptics claim otherwise. Some think that the lab can be used to control the weather and has been used to cause problems for people around the world. From droughts to unusually high wind speeds, there isn't much that hasn't been blamed on the government or military altering weather patterns. It seems that some even think that it caused the Columbia space shuttle to self-destruct. If that isn't far-fetched enough for you, people have also come forward with claims that HAARP can trigger earthquakes, turn the atmosphere into a giant lens, and even flip the Earth's magnetic poles. Mind control's on the table too. All these theories intensified when the Air Force announced that they would be ending the program and potentially destroying the physical equipment. Folks seem to take that as an admission to some fishy business. Eventually in 2016, it was announced that HAARP would be opening up for an annual open house to dissuade visitors of those ideas. Maybe it'll convince the conspiracy theorists, or maybe it'll convince them that they got too close to the truth. Coming in at number 4, we've got the Yellowstone volcano. Don't worry about Yogi and Boo Boo, they're at Jellystone for the time being, but the rest of us might need to brush up on our lava survival tactics. Beneath the famous geysers and springs lies a massive supervolcano. Known as the Yellowstone supervolcano, it is thousands of times more powerful than your average volcano. If it were to erupt, it would cause untold destruction across America. Ash and debris would fly for potentially thousands of miles, covering the landscape with volcanic dust. Needless to say, things wouldn't be easy. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like the volcano will erupt anytime soon. Or will it? The first gigantic eruption of this volcano happened 2.1 million years ago, followed by 2 more. One happened 1.3 million years ago, and another 664,000 years ago. So we shouldn't get one in our lifetime, right? Well, some conspiracy theorists say that we're in more danger than we might think. Depending on who you ask, you might get different answers concerning a Yellowstone eruption. Some say that the next eruption will be small potatoes and won't amount to much, but others think that it'll be huge and the government knows exactly when it'll happen. If the government knows when it'll happen and won't let the public know, one might assume that it'll be within a few lifetimes and therefore is a real terrifying threat. Maybe this information can be used to leverage power or keep the populace blissfully unaware, but who knows? But if the volcano is going to explode soon, sending volcanic ash all over the place, the people should probably know. Or maybe not, considering how the general public usually deals with bad news. Coming in at number 3, we've got the Brunswick mineral springs. We'll stick with the geothermal conspiracies for a moment. In Vermont, there's a place known as the Northeast Kingdom, famous for its natural beauty and mysterious springs. There are 6 streams of water flowing side by side, each with totally different mineral content. Iron, calcium, magnesium, white sulfur, bromide, and arsenic. Stay away from that last one. Way back in the day, these springs were seen as medicinal miracles by the indigenous folks around there. They believed that the waters were meant to be shared with anyone who needed them. However, as they tend to do, some colonizers decided that these waters should be sold for profit. Thus began a skirmish between some enterprising businessmen and a couple young individuals tasked with protecting the springs. The colonizers killed the protectors, drawing the ire of a local shaman. The shaman said that anyone who would use these sacred waters for profit would never prosper. A warning or a curse? Well, the second is claimed to be true by conspiracy theorists. Since the shaman proclaimed the perils of profiteering, 4 hotels have opened nearby, and all 4 have mysteriously burned down. It could be a curse, it could be a secret society of spring protectors, or maybe it's just bad luck. But there's no way to know for sure at the moment, and it's not likely that folks will ever really figure it out. But as long as the healing waters flow, you can bet that strange things will occur in the Northeast Kingdom. Coming in at number 2, we've got the oddities at Denver Airport. There's a whole lot to consider here. The Denver Airport is absolutely massive, twice the size of Manhattan proper. This shouldn't come as too big a surprise though, considering that it is one of the United States' busiest runways. Sending off millions of travelers, this place seems to be pretty normal, at least on the surface. But ever since the airport opened in 1995, it has been subject to all sorts of occult claims. First and foremost, the Denver airport went way over budget, over $2 billion apparently. Why and how would they go so far over budget? Well, some claim that these airport expenditures are actually to cover up for some more sinister spending. Claims that the airport shelters many apocalypse bunkers for the world elite are about, with connections between the Freemasons and the Illuminati being drawn. What better place to hide a major secret society than at a major airport, right? These theories are supported by strange evidence from around the many hangars and gates. There's an engraving crediting the airport to the New World Airport Commission. This rubs some folks the wrong way, since such no organization exists. However, this name was chosen by an arts advocate who wanted to reference Dvorak's New World Symphony. Interesting. There's also plenty of art throughout the airport that signals something strange going on. Murals of burning buildings and authoritarian figures can be found all over the place, encouraging conspiracy theorists to draw up apocalyptic ideas. Do the murals predict the end of the world? Well, if viewed in context, they actually present us with a story, beginning with horror and ending with a utopian vision of peace and environmental stewardship. Of course, what's a good conspiracy theory without the mention of aliens, though? Maybe even some Ike-style reptoids. All sorts of sightings have been circulated, with folks saying that they've seen green people running around or vaguely reptilian graffiti somewhere. Speaking to those in charge of the airport, a lot of what people are seeing or claiming to see is the result of workers embracing the mystique of the airport. They've been known to pull pranks, add goofy art to the walls in underground areas, and more. Although, that is just what they would want you to think, isn't it? If you're interested enough, add visiting the Denver airport to your bucket list and let me know what you find out. And finally, at number 1, aliens. Speaking of aliens, we've got the most fundamental of conspiracy theories. Extraterrestrial life, mucking around in our human business. Isn't that just the most exciting idea of all? The best part is nobody can really prove anything in either direction. Arguing that there is no such thing as extraterrestrial life will likely land you in the same place as arguing that there is. There are plenty of conspiracies concerning aliens floating around, though. There's Area 51, the legendary government complex that may or may not be full to the brim with life beyond our own. Is the government experimenting on these little green weirdos? Are they hiding alien technology from the general public? Did Lil Nas X manage to smuggle an alien out? We may never know. Beyond just the knowledge of aliens, there are conspiracy theories concerning aliens affecting life on Earth. Some say that aliens did Stonehenge, others said they built the pyramids. Some say they've kidnapped, probed, and replaced certain people, leaving an alien presence on planet Earth. Odd people could already be among us. Again, we may never actually know. So what's your favorite alien conspiracy theory? There seems to be a lot of them.